Previously on Flowers for Zoe, Stories for Dennis.
But it's also been this far the best year because I have done all of these things, whether they've been hardships or laughter or being happy. I've done it all sober this year.
And now, coming up on the show,
I never decided that I'm never gonna have a drink or never would have cannabis. I'm just getting better today, right? But then I got to a point that I'm like, you know what? You've never been this happy. You never been this confident, really confident of yourself, just accepting who you are. And that was the first time that I'm like, you know what? I believe deep down that I don't need that drug. I feel like I did it.
on today's podcast, we have our first guest. Soroush is currently in recovery after 10 years of polysubstance use, including fentanyl. Today, he is a peer support worker and a Smart Recovery Group Facilitator. As part of his passion for helping others, today he's going to tell his story of loss, hitting bottom, loneliness, isolation, and almost dying. He also shares what it took to reduce harm and begin his recovery journey. Sit back, get comfortable, and hear how Soroush survived and then flourished after his battle with opioids. If you find anything on today's episode activating, please reach out and talk to somebody. If you find the discussion helpful, please share the link with others. Welcome, everybody. On today's podcast, we have our first guest.
Soroush, we welcome you. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about your story and your ideas and your thoughts. So welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on this podcast. I've listened to all your podcasts, some of them twice, and I feel like I kind of know everybody a little bit.
And now that you know about all of us from the podcast, let's hear your story, where you started and what happened and how you got to where you are now.
Sure, yeah. I really started in high school. I moved to Canada when I was in grade 11. Drinking and cannabis was around. It became something that I just enjoyed a lot. And now I realize it was coping with different things, like social anxiety and trying to mask a lot of insecurities and all that. So I started really drink a lot until I was in my 20s. That's when I started using cannabis on a daily basis, and I wanted to go to university. So I was then taking, stimulants to study. I would go back to Iran sometimes to visit, and I would go back there and I couldn't get a hold of cannabis over there. Opioids and pills are around. Opium is really big, but I'm like, well, I can replace this with cannabis. I feel as good as doing what it's supposed to do. And I brought a lot of pills back with me. Eventually, I moved towards opioids. I realized that it just does something for me that like I was trying to get us from those stimulants, and it was discreet, and I never thought it was a problem. Thinking I graduated from high school in 2005, probably around 2008, 9, I was taking those pills. Over 10 years, your tolerance grows and you need more to get the same effect. I had to take now 10 of them to get the same effect. So I was thinking, oh, this is too much, it's hard on me and my liver and my stomach, and it's not even doing much. And by the time I finished my bachelor's degree, I was smoking opium daily. I would do it and I would go to school, come back and I would do it and I go to work. I would go back to Iran and I do more. So my tolerance would grow. And that was something I couldn't do all the time. So then I was buying prescription that was available here. And just a mixture of these opioids became a part of my life. And people around me, my circle of friends, didn't think that I was doing it to a degree I was. I started to isolate. I got into relationships that they could accept what I was doing and isolating my own place and doing it more and more. Eventually, I was thinking of like continuing education to go even higher and stuff, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't hold a job anymore. Now I realize I was getting fired because of things that they could notice. Money became an issue. I couldn't afford to pay for it all the time. And I didn't have the support of my family that much. It just got to more cheaper stuff to get the same effect. And the last 2 years before I kind of go into recovery, it was just got really bad. I was using opium and I was smoking prescription pills on top of it, which now I know they were fentanyl. Long story short, when I was back in Iran, I lost a friend to an overdose that actually lived with me here, and we started on this together. And he was always further in this journey. He gave me my first pill when, I went through a breakup and I should take this pill, or when I was in Iran. So, and he always had this stuff and always trusted him, but he just went downhill and, he overdosed. And that didn't even make me to stop. I kind of lost it after that. I went downhill to smoking crystal meth and just anything I could get my hands on. I came back to Canada, and that's when, I would never go like to street and buy. I always had a dealer, and like got the good stuff. But when I came back to Canada, I had no money, and I couldn't find the stuff I used to, like opium and the pills, like they were shut down and it was harder to get here. So I went to the streets on the east side and got my first batch of street fentanyl. And I did that. And all this time, I'm kind of know I'm going downwards, but in the back of my head, I'm trying to get better. Like, I can like talk about all the periods I tried to stop and cut down and go on trips so I cannot use many times. But when I had that fentanyl, I'm like, okay, this is it. Because I was getting kind of sick of it. My tolerance was so high and I couldn't just address that. And everybody was like I was doing it all the time. And when I used them, I'm like, wow, like this is something I can do for a while, and I'm gonna be medicated, let's say, with it. This is really strong, but I also knew the first time I did it that this will kill me. Just how strong, just the way I knew opioids and how the effects and the strength that this had and the destruction I see. Like when I did it, I knew I either have to only do this for a while. Like that was the first time I knew I had to go to treatment for sure in my head. It was a couple of years that other people could see it and would tell me, but that was the time that I knew that I would end up like my friend. But still, I did that for almost a year. And I went to treatment in 2018 in December. I was looking for treatment now for a couple of months. By the time I was there, I started to live back at home with my parents. Then for like 6 months or so, that's when I was kind of reducing harms by that point. I'm looking for treatment. I went to the first one that was on my list. I've been clean and sober for 3.5 years.
Congratulations, 3.5 years.
Yeah, seriously, that's so amazing. Your story is heartbreaking.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a survivor story, and it's a lonely story.
I think addiction is very, very lonely. It is, it's there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of negative feelings with it. And then when you get people who just put that hand out and are like, okay, I'm going to help you, you kind of start looking at things differently, and I don't know how your support system really was. I know you mentioned your parents there for a little while, But with no support system, like it's lonely, it's hard. It's like you have nobody on your team, nobody on your side, nobody understands.
It was very lonely, especially if you want to maintain your image and portray that you're the person everybody thinks in a way and you're doing great. As I said, I went, to university, I got graduated, I had really good jobs, but you can't talk to anyone, especially like a couple of times I would go to my, family doctor. Let's see how they can support you, right? They'd be like, okay, maybe you should take this pill. And that, like, it wasn't really anything that I have any hope for. And then I'm like, how am I gonna like talk to anyone about this? But it was really hard, you just don't know what you look for. And as I said, I went to doctors many times and they couldn't even like tell anything was wrong. I would do blood tests and things were normal. I'm like, how is this possible? Like I'm taking all these pills every day. I never had any kind of counseling or therapy until I was in treatment. Like nothing. Like I never talked to anyone about my feelings. Even in treatment, I just did not open up to anyone, and no one in my family did. No one in my culture did. If you got help in therapy, there was something really wrong with you. And I would see my friends going to treatment. The one that I lost, he went to treatment. Two of my friends that I lost to overdose, both of them grew up together in Vancouver. Both of them went to SFU. One of them wanting to go to medical school. So we always like, oh, this is the guy you should ask for. He knew about all the medicines. He knew about, everything in the body, and we would trust them. And both these people went to treatment, and right away they end up overdosing. Like that didn't work, right? Like how am I? So it feels really lonely. Like you just try to do it on your own.
I wrote down as you were talking because it really resonated. It really stood out. You said, I know I'm going down, and yet I'm trying to get better. And so even as you're describing all of these steps and directing your attention to, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. This is the complexity of what's happening when you're in this struggle, and it is quite lonely. And so there's a lot of negotiating that's happening for you that maybe others aren't aware of.
Yeah, exactly. Like as I was thinking about all of this, as you said, it's really complex. Like the last 2 years before I go to treatment, it was my worst years. I was going down so fast. But those were also the 2 years that I was thinking that I need to get better and I need to get help. At the same time, I'm just almost going to die. I'm just getting worse and worse. And I know I was going down really fast, but also just trying.
It's like a constant battle within yourself. You're always on guard with yourself. You're always fighting the positive with the negative.
I'm curious. What is it that service providers need to know? Like, is there something they need to know? Because you talk about, the desire to want something and to help yourself is really high. You want to help yourself. You're searching for ways to help. And what I'm also hearing is it's not always easy to talk to service providers. It's not always easy to share transparently and openly.
It's getting a lot better, I would say. I really appreciate that there is just a lot of work being done in a way of harm reduction and dealing with stigma. And that's really big. To be honest, one of the things that in my mind got me to think about treatment was those ads, those government ads about stigma. That really made an effect. Like, let's end this stigma. This is just a medical condition. I'm actually getting goosebumps as I talk about it, because that was the first time I'm like, you know what, this is a medical condition. I am sick. I need some help. It's really hard for people to understand, and you don't feel that connection. So then you don't want to open up, having people with lived experience. I just look back at all the impact they had on me and all the value they did. Really, the people with lived experience got me to stay. Just saying that we do understand, we know what you go through. This is normal, your whole body and mind ask you to go and get this stuff. And all through these years, that kind of lived experience next to the professional help provided the help and support for me to ask for that help, to be open to like in the treatments. And she would talk to me, and maybe you should go to the doctor and bump up your methadone, for example. Like some solutions like that. Maybe you're not talking about this, right? Maybe the Suboxone doesn't work. The tolerance is too high. Maybe they didn't really hear your whole story.
Throughout addiction, it's almost like your brain is foggy. It's almost like you need a brain outside of your body to kind of direct you to what you don't know you need. So you need that extra help outside of your body, that brain outside of your body, to be like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is not working, so we need to try this. It's so beneficial to have somebody by your side.
When Zoe came out of detox, she had this whole life in pieces that she had to slowly put back together. Did you have a mess to clean up as well?
Yes, too big of a mess that I'm still cleaning up, to be honest. I just had my last check-in with my probation officer just this Tuesday. 27 months I had to deal with like that kind of mess. That's just one example, right? Going through the court and the correction system and all that. Couple of times, I relapsed after once 8 months after my treatment, I relapsed. I was worse than when I got into treatment. One thing that really helped was just taking a step back and just slow down, right? As Daniel said, there's everything, there's all these messes, but I can't just fix them all like as soon as I'm, clean. Just getting clean and staying like that, it's enough work. I always say recovery for me became a full-time job. I got back to work. I actually relapsed at work the day I went back to work because I just couldn't take the pressure. So just slowing down like everything, and it's so hard. Everybody around you wants you to do everything perfectly, and now they want you to, you and everyone wants to fix everything. This is why you got clean. So I had to learn a lot of stuff to really slow it down and really don't be affected by other things or how other wants my recovery to be. I realized that maybe for a while I should stay with my family. I can't be on my own. Maybe for a while, it's a good thing that I'm not going back to work and I don't have so much money with me. I learned it the hard way. I would go really fast and, have this perfectionistic kind of tendencies that I have and want to do everything and, failing and relapsing. That 8 months I was going to AA. That's what people say you should do. I just dove into the process. I'm like, I'm gonna trust the process, what everybody says. I'm just gonna do it. Let's see how it goes. I'm like, I can always go back to what I was. I'm just gonna give this a try, Let's do this for a couple of months. Let's see how it goes. And it was good. And I was completely sober and I was on methadone. I would go to AA. I'm not really getting anything out of it in that way. I got a lot of community and seeing other people, and that was really amazing. But focusing on that, I didn't do other stuff. I didn't work on myself and really looking at what I need to do, what are the things that I need to learn.
One of the things you mentioned when you first started using substances in the 11th grade when you first moved to Canada was social anxiety. I'm amazed at how many people have social anxiety and they hide it so well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually, as you said, a lot of people seem to have it. I never thought I did. Now that I look back, I thought I was perfect, right? But then I would give presentations, I would go to classes in school, I was always like the life of the party and being so social. But that was when I was medicated. I would do everything in my power to be able to do that because that's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. But I didn't have the tools to do it the right way. I did it the way I knew best and it worked for me. Now, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I did have a lot of, since I was really young, I did have a lot of anxiety and I had a lot of depression. Then I look back, I'm like, when did I start drinking? And I realized it really started with the first relationship I had with a girl. Every time that I had to say, I'm like, let's go for a drink because I'm so anxious. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And then I go to a party with people. English is my second language. Now I'm more insecure. Like that drink just takes the edge off, and I'm feeling more comfortable. So it was really self-medication, and the reason it became daily is because I was in that. I was having that social anxiety daily. I didn't want to stay at home, and I wanted to be social. When I look back, a lot of my friends did what I did. They used these substances, we partied together, but only a couple got really addicted. If you look at the data, the percentage of the people who actually get substance use disorders is like 20% or something of the whole people who actually do these substances. So in a way, it's not a choice because those people made the choice. Everybody kind of drinks. So you can't say when you had your first drink, you chose to be addicted, right? No, I got addicted because of my past, of the things I went through. That's why I chased that, medication, and that's why I needed. And that's what I realized in my recovery. Wow, I'm having a lot of self-worth problems, and that's another thing. Like this smart recovery kind of looks at and believes that people with addictive, behavior usually have some issues with self-worth. And that, I love myself and I feel like I'm confident. But in a way, I had self-worth. That social anxiety came from my self-worth problems. Like right now talking to you, I want to have the perfect hair. Otherwise, I'm not good. I want to be the perfect person. So I had to learn to not be perfect, not care what I'm going to say, not think that is my value. That's what it's constant practice, right? It's one thing of you knowing it, the awareness, that was big. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what. But another thing is to practice it. Every time I'm going somewhere and I'm anxious, like for this podcast, I kind of have to do that self-talk, you're enough, you're good as you are, and this is who you are, and I have to really believe it. I was so motivated as I was learning these things because I was empowered. I'm like, wow, like for the first time, I'm kind of learning this stuff about myself, and there are fixes to it. I can actually fix it. And the more I did that, then I didn't need the drug. I've been a smart recovery facilitator for, I think almost a year. And, I hold groups and talk, and I still get that, those butterflies and get anxious, but constantly in my head, like, you know what, you're just doing that. Or when someone criticizes me, right, that used to be huge and still is. It just gets me so down to that depression mode, right? So that was another thing, right? Connected to self-worth. And then actual exercises, I had to learn breathing exercises. Like the first time I couldn't even have a deep breath because I never had an actual deep breath before. This therapist like, oh, let's start breathing, right? Do stretches and mindfulness. All those things started to really help. And then I'm like, you know what? I never decided that I'm never gonna like have a drink or never would have cannabis. I was like, I'm just getting better today, right? But then I got to a point that I'm like, you know what? You've never been this happy. You never been this confident, really confident of yourself, just accepting who you are. just all the things. It's so great. Like, and that was the first time that I'm like, you know what? I believe deep down that I don't need that drug. I just know because it wouldn't make me feel better. And that's when I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can talk about this. Maybe I can share that. I don't feel like I'm just faking it till I make it anymore. I feel like I did it. And that took a while. I was 2.5 years sober, and I was 3 years in recovery when I got to that point that yes, I can be like this guy who facilitates this group, and I can be a peer support worker, and I believe the stuff that he talks about. Because it's so hard when you don't have all those tools and you don't have that awareness, and you're feeling so bad, getting down, like you're taping down and your methadone, you feel so bad. It's so hard to believe that you can be good. So when the peer support worker talks about how he's, he has a daughter and he's going to school and everything is perfect and, um, so colorful and, you know, in my mind, I'm like, bullshit. That's not you just saying that in front of the group, you want to go use. Like, that's the mentality I have because I can't feel that yet, right?
Mm.
But when I felt that was beautiful. I'm like, wow, this guy was right all this time. And it's a good thing that I gave it a chance and I just trusted him and this process.
When you talk about that process, I want to go back to when you started to talk about slowing down, what slowing down brought for you. And you were earlier talking a little bit about like coming out of whether it's rehab or treatment, there's a lot of excitement from family members. There's a lot of excitement from the people around you who sometimes can feel like cheerleaders, right? Like, "Oh, look what you've done," and now you've got your whole life in front of you. And I would imagine that there's a lot of pressure with that. And you talked about how when you began to allow yourself to slow down, that your own wisdom started to develop. You started to work more in pace with what you needed. A long process. How did you help the people around you slow down so you could begin to work with your own pace?
Addiction is a family disease. As you said, you come out of treatment, I was there for 5 weeks and in 5 weeks, I gained like 10, 15 pounds. I look brand new and everything seems perfect. So I'm on the pink cloud. I'm just going to conquer the world and everybody around you so happy. And yeah, it's really hard for people to see that this process takes time, because we don't talk about it. We only talk about people going to rehab and getting clean. We don't talk about this as a process that needs to be done. So, people are okay now. Like for example, my family, okay, when are you going back to work? And then we should go on this trip and we should plan that. And we actually went on trips, and I started drinking and things getting worse, going to, out to parties, to gatherings, family stuff. Me and everybody around me expect me to now have a hold of it, now be perfect. I had to learn it the hard way. I had to slow down. The professionals kind of talked about it. This program talked about it. Write down your triggers. As simple as that, right? Right? When did this happen? When I look back, okay, it's all these gatherings that I went. When did I use? When was the trigger? It was when I went back to work and my boss wanted me to finish this project. Or so how can I, or when I saw this friend that he doesn't even use, but when I'm around him for some reason, I associate with using with something. Or maybe like going downtown, maybe for a while I just shouldn't go downtown. It just brings up a lot of memories. And that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. They would be like, come to this party or come here. It's my son is being born. You don't want to see him. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just working on recovery. Oh, it's been 6 months. It's taking so long, right? And another thing that then I had to learn and my family had to learn was boundaries. We never thought of boundaries. In our culture, you're always there for each other. You're so close, so that's something that me and my family had to learn, both to take things slow and the process takes time.
Zoe, you have a final question?
Honestly, I don't have any questions. I think it was just all I want to say is I think you're amazing. I think your story is amazing. And God, I would love for you to come back again. And
Maybe.
I'm actually going to take into consideration about slowing down. So thank you for absolutely everything that you brought to this podcast today. I absolutely enjoyed myself, and I hope you want to come back.
So yeah, it was amazing. I would love to come back.
This was wonderful. Till next time.
Till next time.
Sure, good to see everybody. Yeah,
Okay.
All right.
take care.
Take
Take
care.
care.